Now, let me start this out by being honest and saying that over the years, I really haven't kept up with the whole movement of releasing the Snyder Cut of the Justice League movie. I mean, I've been a huge comic book fan my whole life, but I've always been more of a Marvel guy than DC, and overall, the DCEU really hasn't been something I followed all that closely. Yeah, I saw the Justice League movie, thought it was okay, and I moved on with my life, though I certainly understood why some more hardcore DC fans were upset and were calling for a different, and potentially better version of that movie. And now it seems like those fans are finally getting what they asked for. The Snyder Cut of the movie will be finished, costing somewhere around $20 million, and released on the new HBO Max streaming service sometime next year. And if you don't know, or are curious, or whatever, what basically happened was, and forgive me if this is not 100% accurate, but Zack Snyder was the original director of the film, the project was in full swing, nearly done I believe, and his daughter tragically took her own life, and he left, which I don't think anyone would or should blame him for. Even if he wanted to stay and finish it, I'm not sure he'd be able to focus on making a movie after something like that. Anyway, Joss Whedon was brought in at that point, and per the studio's request, which in this case is Warner Brothers, reshoots and changes were made. The movie was given a more upbeat tone, and cut down to a runtime of 2 hours. And well, the rest is now history. People, or should I say a lot of fans, were not happy with the version of the movie we got, and have been wanting to see what would have been if Snyder had finished it, and they have been very, very vocal about wanting to see that. And so now, after years of persistence, again, they're getting it, it's being finished and coming to HBO Max next year, and you'd think that's where the story stops, with a happy ending where a studio gives fans something they want, and in turn uses this to help sell or get people to sign up for a new streaming service. Sounds like nothing but a win-win scenario to me. But nowadays, nothing can be that simple. Someone always has to get offended or assume the worst of someone or something, or make up the worst or create their own boogeyman in order to get clicks, likes, and shares on an article, video, or whatever. And so in the last couple days since this announcement, there have been articles popping up, like this one from Vanity Fair, that ask if this is setting a dangerous precedent, if doing this is rewarding a toxic fandom. And that's the name they like to slap on any section of a fan base that has the audacity to question the quality of a product, one they're of course expected to pay for in order to consume, created by one of these massive corporations like Disney, or in this case Warner Brothers. And more often than not, these corporations did not originally create these properties, they bought them with the sole intent to profit off of them. And an argument often brought up by those who defend these corporations or the movies they create is that since they own the property, they can do whatever they want with them, which is, of course, absolutely true. Yet at the same time, what that argument tends to say is that some people, not all of them mind you, care more about the brand itself than anything else. They see Star Wars as that classic logo. If Disney puts it on something, it's not meant to be questioned, it's meant to be purchased, accepted, and praised. Which is, no surprise, a mindset these corporations absolutely love, and is very likely one of the reasons why any ally they have in the media, or a critic who wants to be invited to the next big world premiere their studio puts out, aka a shill, will attack the fans who are dissenters or detractors, who don't buy into the brand is everything mentality, who think properties like DC or Star Wars are something far, far more than just a logo, is something more than just this thing owned by a certain corporation, who can do whatever they want with it, who instead believe that, in a way, it transcends that. And no, I'm not trying to say or imply that every fan who enjoys the cut of the Justice League that we got, or who loves everything about Disney Star Wars, is just someone who will accept anything attached to the brand. There are those who genuinely enjoy them and want to talk about and celebrate them, which is fine. It really doesn't bother me one bit that people make videos or write articles or talk about on social media or whatever else it might be about why they love Disney, Star Wars, and all the movies. As I've said before, I think it's great that there are those who are 100% happy with the movies and who love them. I truly am happy for those fans. But if they have the right to celebrate those films, which they do, I think others should have the right to discuss what they don't like about them and to do it as loudly and as passionately as they want, though I do always encourage things to be done in a civilized manner, especially if you actually want someone to listen to you and take you seriously. Still, maybe the scariest thing about all of this is that there are those who really feel like people should never be allowed to say something negative, unless of course it's something they want to criticize or complain about. They'll even get upset and frustrated that they have to deal with all your toxicity, as if someone is literally forcing them to go to social media sites or to click on videos and articles and to endure all this hatred, which makes them look selfish, Like social media is only there for them and their opinions, and those who agree with those opinions. But the true irony is when they snap back and berate and belittle those who are being negative by being negative and toxic back at them, because I guess the best way to beat all the perceived hate and toxicity is with your own hate and toxicity. And though I'm all for them speaking about what they want, how they want, I'm not interested in silencing people, and them having a voice is by no means what I'm upset about. Instead, what is irritating is the moral superiority they oftentimes try to subtly claim, because it's somehow okay for them to complain about the things they don't like, but not for others to complain about the things they don't like. And I do love it when they say, if you don't like the movies or whatever else it might be, then don't watch them. And couldn't the very same thing be said back? If you don't like something, don't pay attention to it. If you don't like what I'm saying, ignore it. Again, it's not like people are tackling them, taking their phones and clicking on these things and forcing them to watch and or read something. But maybe the funniest or saddest part of all of this is that none of the fandom infighting would make for much of a story as is. DC fans or Star Wars fans just getting mad at each other over the handling of the properties they love based on just the stories and movies themselves wouldn't be something your average person outside of the fandom cares enough to click on an article about or to share that article with a friend. If there wasn't something more to all of this, and I say this affectionately and to hopefully make a point, but anyone outside of the fandoms would see this as nothing more than angry nerds bickering with each other. However, if something more sinister was at play here, if there were maybe a reason why some fans didn't like these movies beyond just thinking they suck, well, that can draw some attention. That can make for a real story. I mean, what if a lot of Star Wars fans secretly hated women? I mean, sure, we'd have to ignore the fact that Leia is one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise, and be ignorant of a character like Ahsoka Tano, who grew to become a fan favorite, and many, many other female characters that were introduced in the books and comics of the EU, you know, the stuff only consumed by the more hardcore fans, and never once did they raise an issue with any female characters there. And for good measure, we'll just say that they're racist too. I mean, why not? We'll just ignore the fact that Lando, like Leia, has been a fan favorite for decades, and you'd be hard-pressed, if it's not almost impossible, to find any fans saying anything negative about him because of his race. We'll also then ignore the fact that Mace Windu is one of the most powerful Jedi ever, on par with Yoda, and no one has ever gotten upset about that or said anything bad about the character because of his race, almost as if it's just all about the quality of the character with the fans, and not what they look like or what race and gender they are. But we'll just ignore all that history and base everything off the reactions to the sequel trilogy. And as I've said before, it's all a trap, all of it. It's all about getting people upset and outraged and making money at the expense of the Star Wars fandom in this case. We're fighting their war for them. Because if you write an article about squabbling Star Wars nerds who can't agree on a movie, it's going to get overlooked by most non-fans. They don't really care. But if you write an article about how the Star Wars fandom is overrun by the worst of the worst, and you open it up by mentioning Brexit and comparing them to Trump supporters, well, that's going to get some attention. And they really do hope you ignore the irony that those who complain about Trump might just be the loudest, most outspoken group of people in human history. And yet it's usually they who attack the loud, toxic fans the most, but not always. Though at the same time here, please do feel free to criticize the President of the United States. He's the most powerful person in the world, and he should be watched closely. If you disagree with him, you should be allowed to speak up against him. That's one of the great things about this country, that we have the freedom to speak out against our leaders without the fear of reprisal or repercussions. And though nowhere near as important, you could argue, fans unhappy with the handling of a property they absolutely cherish should be allowed to speak up too. The customers of a giant corporation should be allowed to challenge or criticize products they're being asked to buy. And sometimes it pays off for them, just like how DC fans who wanted to see the Snyder Cut of the Justice League are being rewarded for their persistence. It was outcries of angry Star Wars fans too that helped bring the Clone Wars back. Anyway, I think I veered a bit off topic here, so I'll start to wrap this up. And one of my points here is that it seems to be so very odd that some want to spin the release of the Snyder Cut of Justice League in a negative way. That customers being able to ask for something and getting it is a bad thing. To not appreciate this happening makes it seem like fans should have no say, that corporations should just crank out whatever they want, and we should be loyal and buy it regardless. Furthermore, these ridiculous excuses created and comparisons made as to why fans don't like something needs to stop. Just because, for example, a woman is the lead doesn't mean it'll be good. It doesn't mean I have to like it, and it doesn't mean I can't speak out if I don't. We really need to stop conflating criticism with hate already. They are not the same thing. We have to stop thinking fans of something should be mindless consumers and just grateful that we get new Star Wars or new DC movies at all. And that's another thing I could spend a whole video talking about, the idea that criticizing makes you ungrateful. When this is not something just being given away or given to fans for free, this is something they are asking you to pay for. I mean, stupid example here, but if someone gave you a car free of charge and it ended up breaking down a couple days later, well, you'd probably be upset to some degree, but you'd likely still be grateful that they tried to give you something. But if you instead bought a car and it broke down a couple days later and you tried to bring it back and the salesman called you ungrateful, well, you're going to be pretty upset, and rightfully so. And for some reason, regarding the Snyder Cut here, some people seem to be upset that the car salesman who sold you a crappy car is apologizing and agreeing with the customer and is willing to fix the car and make it even better perhaps, though it will cost you a little extra. Somehow in their eyes, there's something wrong with this. Something wrong with customers or fans having a voice. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. I've rambled enough. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here. Again, I'm all for people disagreeing with me and speaking out and saying how they feel. That's how it should always work. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars and some Justice League and whatever else. And until next time, thanks for watching.